Welcome to another episode of the MemcycoFM show. So I want you to imagine something for a second. Imagine a burglar isn't just, breaking into your digital house.
Hmm.
They're actually building an exact, pixel-perfect replica of it right next door.
Oh, yeah. And your users are just willingly handing them the keys? It's
Yeah.
wild.
Right, exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into the evolving landscape of brand impersonation detection. And our mission here is really to help you, the CISO listening right now, fundamentally upgrade your defense strategy.
Absolutely. Because we really need to move away from just merely hunting down fake digital assets. We have to transition to actively protecting your users in real time.
Yeah, and to set the baseline for why this operational shift is, well, frankly, non-negotiable right now, we just need to look at the recent 2025 data. I mean, the scale of the problem is massive.
It is massive. But, as we'll unpack today, it's an entirely solvable engineering and correlation challenge. It really is.
Totally. So looking at the FTC data published in April 2026, consumers reported $2.1 billion in losses from scams that originated solely on social media.
2.1 billion. And I mean, that represents an 8x increase since 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. And the anatomy of those scam journeys, it almost always begins with like an ad or a post that's funneling people to environments designed to perfectly impersonate trusted brands.
And if you add the APWG data to that, they reported 3.8 million phishing attacks in 2025 alone. Just in the fourth quarter, we saw over 850,000 attacks.
Right. And the scope of targeted organizations is expanding too. It went from, 457 brands in October to almost 500 by December.
Yeah, 496. It's everywhere.
So look, when you see an influx of 3.8 million attacks and billions in losses, the natural industry reflex is to just assume we have a visibility deficit. Like we assume we're blind and we just need more threat intelligence feeds.
Which makes sense on paper, right?
Right. But what's fascinating here is that the reality is quite the opposite. The enterprise problem isn't a lack of threat signals at all. I mean, we are absolutely drowning in data. The critical failure point is actually signal timing.
Oh, I see. So we have the raw intelligence, but it just arrives at, the wrong stage of the security pipeline.
Exactly. We need to use that data much, much earlier in the attack sequence. Most of your traditional security controls are just optimized for the wrong objective.
What do you mean by the wrong objective?
Well, they're exceptionally good at discovering impersonation assets, right? Packaging them up for investigation, initiating a takedown request.
Right, the classic whack-a-mole.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But that process tells us so absolutely nothing about the current active state of risk.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell the OS stack whether real users are, interacting with a malicious clone right this exact second.
Yeah, or if a legit login attempt was just preceded by a credential harvesting event on the fake site.
Spot on.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Because the core friction here is really the distinction between the finish line and the starting line. I feel like historically we treat finding a fake asset, like a lookalike domain, as a victory condition.
Oh, 100%. The SOC finds it, legal triggers the takedown, the ticket gets closed, and everyone moves on.
Right. But treating a domain takedown as the end of your job is like finding a broken window at your house, boarding it up, and patting yourself on the back without ever checking to see if the burglar is currently standing in your living room.
That is the perfect analogy. Because boarding up the window, that takedown process, it just mitigates future external risk. You force the next attacker to find a new way in.
Right.
But simply finding the broken glass, it doesn't tell your incident response team who was exposed while the window was wide open. You don't know if session tokens were stolen during that specific window of vulnerability.
But wait, let me push back on that for a second. The broken window analogy makes total sense for external risk, but operationally. How does the SOC team actually look inside the living room?
Well, that's the challenge.
Because enterprises have massive security stacks. I mean, they have external monitoring teams, SOCs, fraud units. Aren't they already catching this?
You'd think so, right. They are looking at the telemetry, but they're severely handicapped by what we call the silo problem. It's a structural issue.
Like internal communication silos.
Exactly. Look at how these stacks are deployed. Your brand protection team might get an alert about a fake landing page, but meanwhile, your external threat hunting team is the one spotting a lookalike domain.
Oh, I see. And then days later, customer support is getting bombarded with complaints.
Right. And finally, the fraud team's behavioral analytics flag the suspicious account access. Everyone holds a single, isolated piece of the puzzle.
And because they evaluate the risk in separate systems at totally different times, the attacker wins.
Exactly. The adversary understands our operational silos perfectly. They exploit that latency. Because a fake page, It only needs to be live for a fleeting moment to capture credentials.
Which leads us to really the most dangerous blind spot in the modern threat landscape. That space after a fake asset goes live, but before the enterprise actually takes action.
We define this as the exposure signal gap.
The exposure signal gap. Okay, so for the CISOs evaluating their own incident response times right now, break down the mechanics of this gap.
Sure. So it's that critical window where impersonation signals exist, they're generating telemetry in the wild, but they haven't been connected to exposed users or credential risk yet.
You have the puzzle pieces, but you aren't putting them together fast enough.
Exactly. And manual assembly isn't a viable option anymore. I mean, if you look at the 2025 Inter-IL Phishing Landscape Report, the total number of domains used in phishing rose 38% year over year. That's more than 1.5 million domains.
Wow. Yeah, SOC cannot manually process 1.5 million domains across 4 siloed teams and beat automated attacks.
It creates an insurmountable bottleneck. You end up operating entirely in the past tense.
Okay, so we've defined the gap. Let's pivot to the solution. How does a CISO actually close this exposure signal gap? We know what doesn't work.
Right. Instead of static lists, we need to look at the continuous sequence of an active attack. There are 6 key signals that map directly to this.
Let's walk through those. I'm assuming the earliest signs are the infrastructure ones.
Yes. Number 1, lookalike domains and brand-like host names. The earliest observable infrastructure.
Though attackers are getting tricky there, right? Using homoglyphs and nested subdomains to bypass traditional scanners.
Oh, absolutely. They engineer it to look totally legitimate. But a lookalike domain just sitting dormant is only a preliminary signal. The context changes when we see step 2 and 3.
Which are?
Step 2 is website cloning attempts, and step 3 is traffic routing from low reputation or impersonation-linked domains.
Wait, let me pause you on that second one, the website cloning, specifically around developer tools reconnaissance. Isn't someone inspecting page structure often just a curious developer or a harmless bot? Why flag that?
In isolation? Maybe. If you evaluate a scraping action on its own, your false positive rate will be unmanageable. It looks just like a Google bot.
Right.
But when evaluated as a sequence, like if that dev recon correlates with traffic from a newly registered lookalike domain, that changes the risk score. That's an attacker actively prepping a phishing attack.
I get it. Context is everything. So the infrastructure is staged, the traffic is routed. What's the next signal?
Number 5, decoy credential use. And this is huge. From an engineering standpoint, this is your highest confidence signal.
Because it's a trap, basically.
Exactly. When an attacker harvests those specific decoy credentials on their fake site and then replays them against your legitimate API endpoints, you instantly establish a definitive link.
You essentially prove the exact phishing infrastructure being used.
Yes. It represents the exact moment brand impersonation turns into an account takeover or ATO risk.
It's the moment they turn the doorknob with the stolen key.
Perfectly said. Which brings us to the final signal. Suspicious login patterns following exposure. The fraud team can evaluate a login attempt enriched with the knowledge of what happened just moments before.
Did this user interact with the impersonation sequence we've been tracking? If yes, block it.
Exactly, long before the domain takedown is ever finalized.
That makes so much sense. But to actually implement this, security leaders have to stop treating these overlapping threats as separate vendor categories, right?
Yes, the vendor landscape has really fragmented the response. We have to clearly define the 3 distinct objectives here.
Right, let's break those down because there's a lot of confusing overlap. So objective 1 is brand impersonation, basically is our identity being misused to deceive users.
Right, objective 2 is phishing detection. Is this interaction designed to capture sensitive data?
And then objective 3 is domain takedown. How do we get this fake asset off the internet?
Exactly. But attackers don't view these as 3 separate categories. They experience them as one fluid sequence.
They spin up the impersonation, deploy the proxy, and replay the tokens all at once.
Right. So a CISO's defense must act as one fluid sequence too. A brand monitoring alert must tell the authentication stack what to do next.
So what does this all mean for the CISO listening right now? I mean, operationally.
It means moving from an asset discovery mindset to an exposure correlation mindset. And this is where the Memcyco solution really bridges the gap.
Yeah, let's talk about how Memcyco actually solves this. Because we're enabling security, fraud, and SOC teams to finally work from a shared risk picture, right?
Precisely. Instead of waiting for a takedown to complete, which can take days, Memcyco moves external monitoring alerts straight into fraud and authentication decisions.
While the attack is still active.
Yes. We inject a visibility layer that monitors the legitimate site, tracks the cloning, and pipes that exposure telemetry directly into the auth engines.
So you empower the enterprise to block risky logins born from phishing exposure before the damage is even done.
Exactly. You're intercepting the threat right inside the exposure signal gap.
It really is about taking the tools we already have and beating the attackers at their own game just by changing when we evaluate our signals. We don't have to just accept 3.8 million attacks as the cost of doing business.
No, we don't. And I'll leave the listeners with this final thought to mull over. Think about this. If an attacker flawlessly clones your digital front door,
Yeah.
but you have the visibility to ensure absolutely no one ever walks through it, is it a security breach or just digital litter? When you control the exposure, you strip the attacker of all their power.
I love that. Digital litter. That's such a great way to reframe it. Well, to see how you can transform your threat visibility and close the exposure signal gap for your own organization, come book a demo with us. We'd love to show you the Memcyco solution in action and help you stay one step ahead. Thanks for diving deep with us today.